Welcome. In this video I'm going to be taking a look at this 8-port gigabit PoE switch from EnGenius. And this was provided to me by EnGenius, but they're not compensating me for this video and they're not reviewing it before I post it. If you find this video helpful, I'll put a link to this on Amazon in the description, and if you use that link it helps me out a little bit and doesn't cost you anything extra. So this is model ECS1112FP. It's an 8-port gigabit Ethernet PoE Plus managed switch with 2 gigabit uplink ports and 2 SFP slots. And this says it's EnGenius Cloud enabled, has 10 ports, the 2 SFP ports, provides a complete lineup of essential Layer 2 management features. It supports IEEE 802.3 AF AT PoE on 8 ports with 130 watt total budget, easy to manage web-based GUI. It comes with the switch, power cord, an RJ45 console cable, rack mount kit, and a quick installation guide. So here's the installation guide. These are rack mount brackets, power cord, serial cable. These are rubber feet and screws for the bracket. And here's the switch itself. So it feels very substantial. So this is where you plug in the serial console cable. It has power, fault, and PoE max lights, LAN mode, PoE mode, LED mode switch, and looks like a recessed reset button. And here we have our 8 ports, and these are the 2 uplink ports and the SFP ports. And all of these ports support gigabit Ethernet. On the sides we have the screw holes for the rack mount ears. We have venting. On the back we have a fan and the power port. And on the opposite side we have a smaller vent and then the mounting holes. The bottom's pretty plain. I'm covering up the serial number on here. But we have little spots here that show you where to put the feet. And I'll be using those, so I'll put those on. So I'm guessing a lot of people watching this know what a PoE switch is, but there might be some people that don't, so I'll just give you an idea of what you can do with this. So this supplies network capabilities to computers just like any other switch would, but it also sends power over the cable. So you can use it to power things like access points. So you could route this to your ceiling with a single cable, and that single cable would run your network and your power for this device, so you don't have to plug it into a power adapter. You can see this has a little connector for a power adapter, and that would be if you did not use PoE. But when you're using PoE, you don't have to use that jack. You just hook up your one cable and you're good to go. So it's a lot easier to set up. You can also use it with security cameras. This is a PoE security camera. Same thing as the access point. It does have power on here, but you do not need that if you're using power over Ethernet. So you plug one cable into here and you can mount your camera pretty much anywhere. While I don't have one to show, there are phones that use power over Ethernet too, and then you just run the one line to the phone and it powers the phone and provides the phone capabilities. Another thing you can use power over Ethernet for is for things like a Raspberry Pi. I don't have the adapter for this, but you can get what's called a PoE hat, and you plug it into this and you can run this whole computer off of the Ethernet. So you could put this in some remote location. You could have, say, a temperature sensor hooked up to it, and you could monitor remote temperatures. You could have this hooked up to a kiosk. Say you have a menu system in a restaurant and that's run off the Raspberry Pi, you could run your Ethernet to it and then you don't have to run power separately. And especially, say you have 2 TVs and you have one outlet that has 2 outlets in it. So you can hook the 2 TVs into that and you need power for this device. It might be a lot cheaper just to run power over Ethernet to this than it would be to hire an electrician to come put another outlet in for you. And another thing you can use is something like this. This is the EnGenius SkyKey, and this is for managing these devices. And this runs over power over Ethernet too. And this is just a small computer, but there are numerous devices you can use with power over Ethernet. So this is a layer 2 switch, meaning it has network management features. So this has a web interface built right into it, so you can connect up to it and manage it. But you can also use that SkyKey like I just showed you. If you had multiples of these, that's a nice management tool, so you can manage them all centrally. And then this is also capable with their cloud system, so you can manage it from the cloud. So if you have one of these, you might want to use the web interface on it. If you have multiple of these in one location, you might want to use that SkyKey. And if you have multiples of these in multiple locations, so say you own a dozen coffee shops and you have one of these in each shop, you could manage those in the cloud. So you go to one website to manage all of your locations. So in that same example of a coffee shop, you could have, say, 2 wireless access points here, that run your free public Wi-Fi, and maybe they run the Wi-Fi for your point of sale systems. And then maybe you have 4 security cameras here, and here. And then maybe you have a Raspberry Pi computer hooked up to your menu system for like a kiosk. And you could use that here, and then you have 1 port left over. That's just one example. There are many examples you could use. You could fill this up with a lot of access points, security cameras. There's lots of versatility in using a switch like this. I tend to use my PoE switches for security cameras and access points, but I also have that Sky key plugged into mine too. So I'm going to get this powered up, and then we'll take a look at the web interface. Okay, so I plugged the switch into the wall, and I plugged my MacBook into the switch using an Ethernet cable, and I don't have this connected up to my main network yet. So I want to go into my system preferences and then network. And if you're on Windows, you'll go into your network settings to do a similar thing here. And you want to go into your Ethernet settings or your Ethernet port and change that to manual. And then we'll enter an IP address here like 192.168.0.10. And netmask I'll do 255.255.255.0. I'll hit apply. I'll close this down. I'll go to a web browser and I'll go to 192.168.0.239. Now, it will take a little while for this switch to initialize. I've had it on for a couple minutes now. So if it doesn't come up, give it a minute and then it should come up. So the default username and password here is admin and password. I'll hit login. I'll say don't save this yet. So now we're into the web interface. So I want to change the IP address of this switch. So I'll go to IP settings. I'll go to IPv4 management. I'll click on the little pencil here. I'll change configuration to static, and then I'll enter in the IP address I want to use. Better delete the old one first. Subnet mask is the same. I'll hit the check mark there. So now I'll plug it into my main network, and I'll revert the IP address of my laptop back to DHCP. And now we have the login interface on our main network. Okay, so I'm logged into the interface now, and I switched over to Chrome because I was having some trouble with Safari. So when I set up a new device, the first thing I like to do is upgrade the firmware. And I know people have differing opinions on this. Some say you shouldn't do it unless you actually have a problem. I like to do it right away in case it fixes a problem that maybe is already existing. And I want to set it up before I set up the switch itself. So what I'll do is I'll copy the model name. I'll go to a new tab and I'll search for this model name and then the word firmware. So it brings up the product page on EnGenius's website. I'll scroll down a little bit and I'll click on this ECS1112FP firmware. I'll click on that. It'll download it. I'll close this tab. So in the upper right here, I'll click on upgrade. I'll choose method HTTP. Partition is partition 1. File, I'll choose that file I downloaded. And I'll hit apply. It says, are you sure you want to upgrade firmware? I'll hit OK. And now I'll let it do its upgrade. Okay, it says the firmware has been upgraded successfully. Please reboot the system to take effect. So I'll hit OK. I'll just manually reboot. Okay, I'll log back in. So I think the firmware has been upgraded because we now have a message asking us to change our password. So I'll enter a new password here. I'll hit OK. And that's pretty common now that hardware is asking you to change from the default password when you first log in. That's a big security thing. Okay, so the firmware is up to date. And I just want to take a bird's eye view of what's available on this switch. And then I'll go into different areas deeper in other videos. And if there's anything you want me to cover, drop a comment below and I can maybe try and steer towards those areas. So in the upper right here, you can back up your configuration. So you have backup restore. If it's selected on backup, you hit apply. That will download a config file. And if you hit restore, you can choose that config file to upload it. So I think it's a good idea to back up your configuration before and after you make any changes to your switch. So you want to do it before, because if any changes you make screw something up, you can revert back to those changes, and then do it after just so you have a record of what you did. And then we have upgrade. We already upgraded the firmware there. We have reset, so you can reset your switch to factory defaults. And then we have reboot, which just reboots it, and then log out, which logs you out of this interface. So on the left side, we have different sections here. We have system, and we started out on the summary page. We have IP settings, so this is where you can change the IP address of the switch. We have ARP settings, static route, neighbor discovery table, system time, port settings, SFP module information, so this is for your fiber optic cables, DHCP snooping, DHCP relay, PoE. So if we look at that, we can see the power budget is 130 watts, and we have the port settings here, and this will show us how much energy is being used currently. So let me scroll over. I record these videos at a low resolution, so not everything fits on the page, but if you have a 1080p screen, everything will fit on there fine. So on this second port here, I plugged in a PoE camera, and you can see it has the output voltage of 53 volts, output current of 71 milliamps, and the output power is 3.7 watts. We have PD Lifeguard, so that's Powered Device Lifeguard. So that will monitor your devices like your IP cameras, and if they fail, it can restart the devices using the PoE. And then the EEE, that's for Energy Efficient Ethernet. You can enable or disable it there. Next, we have the Layer 2 features. We have link aggregation, so it allows you to combine ports, mirror settings, spanning tree protocol, loopback detection, MAC address table, LLDP, IGMP snooping, MLD snooping, multicast filtering, and jumbo frame. And we have VLAN, 802.1q, PVID, GVRP, and voice VLAN. For management here, we have system information, so you can change the name of your switch, user management, dual image. So this has 2 partitions on the flash, and you can have 2 images on it. So if you want to try out a firmware, you can upgrade that. And then if you have problems with it, you can click on the other one and switch back to it. Then we have SNMP, the Network Management Protocol. Then we have access control lists. We have MAC ACL, MAC ACE, IPv4 ACL, IPv4 ACE, IPv6 ACL, IPv6 ACE, and ALC binding. We have quality of service, has global settings, COS mapping, ESCP mapping, port settings, advanced mode, bandwidth control, and storm control. We have security, 802.1x, radius server, access, port security, port isolation, and denial of service. Then we have monitoring, we have port statistics, ARMON, log. Then we have diagnostics, we have cable diagnostics, ping test, IPv6 ping test, trace route, and connection diagnostics. So as you can see, the switch has a lot of different features on it, and you don't have to use all of these features. You can just plug it in and plug your devices into it, and then use the features you need. So if you are setting up a cafe and you have some access points that you're using for your point of sale machines, you can set up your VLAN for that and separate it out from your free Wi-Fi you're offering. But if you don't need that feature, you don't have to set that up. It works by default just as a regular switch. So that's all I'm going to cover in this video. I plan on making more videos with this switch. I'll put a link below to my EnGenius playlist where you can find those future videos and any past videos that I've done too. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments. If you like this video, please click like. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, I'd appreciate it if you could do that. And thanks for watching. Until next time, goodbye.